and they're this big, like from here to that end of that desk. And so you have one bed here, one bed there, and two more on the other side. Are you more likely, if you're sick, to spread that to your colleagues? In that you likely are. Only 10% of farm workers reported having employer-provided health insurance. The median grade of school completed by farm workers is 6th grade. Why? Because by the time a migrant child is 12, he or she may work in the fields between 16 and 18 hours per week, leaving little time for schoolwork. And a migrant farm worker child may attend as many as 3 different schools in 1 year because the families are needing to move around, to migrate from crop to crop. No surprise then that 60% of migrant students in the U.S. drop out. What are the barriers to receiving healthcare services? This is an issue that you guys have been talking about for some time from what I gather. Some of the barriers include lack of transportation, limited hours of clinic service, cost of healthcare you mentioned, limited or no interpreter services, frequent relocation, and farm workers are not protected by sick leave. That means that if you get sick and you go up to your patron, to your boss, and say, hey, I'm not feeling well, I'd like to go see a doctor, it is not uncommon for that person to hear back, sure, we get it that you need to go to the doctor, but I can't afford to have you take the day off, or 2 days off, or 3 days off. This is probably your last day with us, and there's a line of people waiting for your job. That's what that feels and looks like and sounds like. The risk of TB among farm workers is estimated to be 6 times greater than the general population of employed adults. Again, the closed living quarters, apologies for the poor quality of the picture. It's a terrible picture, but you can literally see this. This picture always gets me because his frame literally cannot support the weight of what he's trying to carry. But carry he must, which makes this one of the most dangerous occupations according to the General Accounting Office for the U.S. In fact, 800,000 children under the age of 18 work in agriculture in the U.S. 800,000, sorry, that's close to 1 million. And 100,000 children are injured, and 100 are killed in farm work every year. Not a risk that most of you have to face in your given day. So we often hear concerns about migration. I think one of your questions is, it wasn't so much a question, it was a kind of an assumption. Why don't open borders work? Some people may say, well, we can't have people just going in and out. We need to be able to control for who's healthy, who's safe, who's good for our economy, who's good for our country. We can't have people coming here and making us sick, which is not untrue, but I want to tell you that when I traveled to Oaxaca on what's called the Oregon-Mexico Health Professionals Exchange, we toured small villages in that state of Oaxaca that were literally being disseminated, and I mean disseminated, by returning farm workers from the U.S. who had acquired HIV here. I tell you this story because I want to begin to seed in you this thinking and this understanding that diseases do not see borders, and that our borders to disease and illness are bilaterally permeable. Try saying that if your second language is English, by the way. And so the disease vectors travel both ways. So it isn't just protecting ourselves, it's protecting all of us, right? What about in Oregon specifically? what does the farm worker population look like? According to a enumeration study which I commissioned while I was at the state public health office, there are 160,000 farm workers in the state. Of those, 14,588 are migrant children and youth, and 44,000 are seasonal children and youth. As you remember, there are two different categories of folks. This is where the farm worker populations are largely. The dark brown represents a higher density of farm workers. So if you just let your eye naturally go to the reds and the browns, that's where the highest concentration of farm workers are. What's here, by the way? Very nice. She said the Willamette Valley. And the Willamette Valley is literally Oregon's food basket, to put it in those terms. And then we followed the 84 corridor. This is Hood River, the Dalles, Wasco Sherman. This is the Medford area, the county that is, we'll know in the next slide. And then this is Malheur County with the highest concentration. Meredith County is in here, by the way. It's not a very big county. They have the highest number of farm workers. They have, in this small county, 31,000 migrant and seasonal farm workers, just in that county alone. There's also folks used to populate and navigate by rivers. Our current river systems happen to just be I-5 and 84. You can also think about it that way, but mostly it's what you said. The Willamette Valley is one of the most fertile, followed second by the Mid-Columbia Valley. They're also fairly young, 2/3 under the age of 35, 80% male, Hispanic, mostly from Mexico. But one thing has begun to change, and I think your book touches on this. According to a study conducted by Macaulay et al., as many as 43% of those surveyed in Washington County came from indigenous communities in Mexico. Why is that important to talk about and to understand? Yes?
Because the indigenous don't speak Spanish as much, so there's a language barrier there, and they also have like a bigger belief system over other stuff, so that could get also over.
Wonderful. You want to come do this presentation for me? That was perfect. She is saying that we often assume that if folks come from Mexico or from Guatemala, from El Salvador, that their first language is Spanish. In many instances now, probably as much as 50% since this was conducted, farm workers' first language is not Spanish. What is also important to note is that many of these indigenous languages, by the way, they are not dialects. That's really important. To refer to those languages as dialects is dismissive. They are full languages in their own right. What's also true about those languages is that they are oral in nature only, meaning that there's no written form. So when you go to the doctor to get a discharge plan, are you going to be able to read it? So how do you provide a discharge plan to someone whose language doesn't have a written form? Any ideas?
Translators.
Interpreters, that's right. What about for major public health issues, like educating folks about washing your hands, tuberculosis, outbreaks? What might be an effective way to do that? Took folks a while to figure this out, by the way. Yeah.
Mass videos of somebody narrating in the newspaper or trivia.
Wonderful suggestion, but do folks have access to that in the field?
Unless they're employers.
Yeah, largely, so I think you're absolutely right. That can and does work. Radio is the most effective way to reach out to this community. But if you can't, and you're doing great, by the way, you really are. If you can't, then going low-tech, like my presentation is low-tech, and recording messages, like on tape, like on DVDs. You guys don't use a Walkman anymore, is that what I hear? Okay, don't laugh at me, I'm old. All right, of those indigenous farm workers, 76.9% spoke Mixteco, 18% spoke Triqui, and 5.1% spoke Cancoval, and we're grateful to the Oregon Law Center for those figures, and Macaulay especially. Again, low-income folks. In Oregon, alone, migrant and seasonal farm workers are integral to creating over $5.5 billion in annual economic agricultural activity. So I want you to take that number in because they provide a significant value to our state. By the way, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest industry in Oregon. Ironically, Oregon tips the nation in terms of hunger and food insecurity. I believe we had a ranking of the highest rate of food insecurity in the nation. And more than 40% of all farm workers who visit health clinics have multiple and complex health problems. And the dental health of farm workers is that of a third world population. This is a quote, by the way. I hate this term of third world. It's such a superior term to use, right? Third world country, third world folks. I don't know what that means, except it's not a nice thing to say about us or any other country. But what does it mean to say farm workers' dental health is that of a